Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert. We are back with the Ted Show, final show of the day on this first Friday of November. Very excited to have Josh Matthews Morgan on the show. Learnyourbrain.com is his website, and we're going to learn how to overcoming any limiting beliefs that might be holding you back from what you want to do. This is such an important topic, so I'm very happy to have you on the show, Josh. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Ted. I appreciate that warm intro, too. I'm really excited to chat with you.
I'm excited for you to share because I feel like this has been a theme for 2020. People want to do something. They've been forced to do something new. Most of us have had to pivot. And so those limiting beliefs, though, tend to hold us back. We're not sure how to get past it. It makes us hesitate on taking a leap into a new project or taking on something new. And so this kind of information is what people are hungry for. But before we dive into that, everybody wants to know about Josh. So give us a little background on you and kind of your journey to learn your brain.
Yeah, well, that's a great setup because instead of talking about the evolution of our business and all that, I'd rather share my first personal experience with limiting beliefs and why this subject is so near and dear to my heart.
Love it.
It actually started before we started our coaching business. I was a junior in college, and all of a sudden, it was a really weird thing to me at the time. I didn't understand it, but every time I would go to start writing a paper for school, I would start having these really weird physical sensations that were like panic attacks. And it was the weirdest thing because I was totally fine outside of that. But literally, I would sit down at the computer and just something inside of me would just freak out. And I had no idea why. And it got so bad, it got to the point where I called my mom one day, who's my business partner actually too, which is kind of crazy. It's a whole other story.
That's cool.
Yeah. But I called her. I said, if I don't have a solution for this, I'm going to have to drop out of school because I literally can't do this anymore. I can't, I feel like I'm going to die. They were that intense. And around that time, I discovered a technique called emotional freedom technique. And, tapping is referred to as well. It's one of those, really cool emotional brain based techniques. And I said, look, I've got nothing to lose. Either I'm going to drop out or this thing will help me, hopefully. And it was weird. It's like a strange, anyone who's seen it knows it's a strange looking technique. But the long story short, over the summer between my junior and senior year, I started applying it and started shifting feelings one by one. I would bring them up. And my senior year, it was so easy and effortless, like everything. And papers, this was the crazy thing. Not only did I dread them completely my junior year, but they actually became fun for me after I had changed my wiring around
Wow.
it. And I actually looked forward to writing them. And it was such an aha moment. I realized, wow, if I can do this, if I can change from panic attacks to dread on this subject, what the sky's the limit. I could change programming around anything, right? It's really just the way we say it now is it's the way your emotional brain is programmed determines your results. So that was
amazing.
My first experience. Yeah.
I think that people underestimate the value of some of the solutions that are out there, like EFT tapping, because you think, oh my God, there's got to be no science behind that. That's all hokey. I mean, pretty much people, though, I believe, especially in 2020, have begun to explore some of these quote unquote alternate ways of handling things, dealing with things, opening up your mind. Absolutely. And so what, though, took you to the next level where you wanted it to be your company, your career, because it's one thing to feel it and go through it and see the change. It's another thing to really implement that and for it to become what you're currently doing.
Well, that's a fantastic question. And our company didn't start out with this focus in the early stages of it. And it's really evolved to be primarily focused on limiting beliefs because of our own struggles while we were trying to build our company. And, even though I knew about tapping and EFT, I still ran into a lot of different issues that I couldn't solve because I couldn't figure them out. And that's the real key with this whole process is the discovery of it is what makes or break. If you know how to use tools like EFT, then the only thing that keeps people from changing their programming is being able to pinpoint the source of the problem, right? Is being able to accurately identify the belief, because there's always a belief or, you know, a story. You can put words to it that represents the perspective of your emotional brain. So through necessity, we learned and we studied different techniques for discovery. I knew the transformation tool, but it was in learning all these different ways to figure out what's really going on down there. That is what caused me to make sort of quantum leaps in my own programming, and then seeing those results also with clients as we worked with them too. So, we just realized this is the thing that most people struggle with when they're in business. Like, and there's not a lot of people that are giving good solutions out there in the world. There are people, but most people are giving very surface level advice when it comes to this stuff. Right. It's like
that's the thing I think about what you do is, so this part is really critical, because I think people go, all right, I can believe that worked for Josh, but the number one thing is trying to identify what that limiting belief is.
Correct.
Because we have been taught to bury so much of that. And so to bring it to the surface almost is, you want to talk about panic attack for people, actually bring up this topic and really get to the nitty gritty, dirty part of things is very hard for people. So how do we do that? How did you identify? Because I think people, I know people are listening going, I love what he's saying. I don't know what's wrong with me. That's the first question they're going to say. I know something is, but I'm not sure what's stopping me.
Yeah. And yeah, another great question. That is the whole kit and caboodle there. So there are a lot of different techniques that you can use to discover things. And EFT is not the only way of transforming stuff, I should add too, right? There's lots of different therapeutic modalities that work very quickly too. But the downside is you got to work with a therapist or someone who's trained and who really knows what they're doing in order to pull it out to the surface. So one of my favorite tools for doing it on your own is a technique that we call sentence completion. It's really simple. I'll give the story of how I applied this to figure out one of my own limiting beliefs. But basically with sentence completion is just you start a fragment of a sentence, right? You speak it out loud and then you see what pops into your head as like the answer to it. And so, for example, one of the fragments we like to use with people is, I can't do this thing because, like, if you're avoiding doing something or if you're afraid of something, you want to figure out what's the underlying belief behind that. So you could start this. This is how I actually used it. I used to have a terrible fear that I would let down clients whenever we brought them on, and literally like clockwork, when they signed on the dotted line to work with us, I would freak out inside and I couldn't sleep that night. Like, it was like terror. And I was just so frustrated that I couldn't figure it out. And finally I said, let me try this technique. And I said, well, I can't fall asleep right now because, and the first thing that popped out was, I'll let them down and they'll hate me. Right. So that was my underlying fear, was that I will let these clients down. They'll be disappointed in me. They'll hate me. And as soon as I discovered that, I shifted it using EFT, went to sleep, and it's never been an issue since then. And so it's really powerful stuff when you know how to do it.
Okay. So talk about that shift, because I think, so you've mentioned EFT. So tapping, EFT. So you identified it. You identified the limiting belief. Then truly physically, what happens next? What do? You've identified it. And then what are you doing when you're referencing that you were able to make the shift? What physically was taking place, or what were you doing?
Gotcha. So with EFT, you always do a pre-check and you put a number to the intensity of the feeling, because the way you know it's working is that the number will be coming down consistently. So for me, that was like a 10, right? Like I was in a 10 in terms of the intensity of it, this fear that they would hate me, right? And I would let them down. I should add as an aside that had never happened before with our clients, right? Because that's usually
we create these narratives in our head 24/7.
Right, exactly. And they're not always true, but they're always based in our past, right? I learned that somewhere, right? So you always start by putting a number to it, and without going into, there's a lot of information about EFT. So online, and a lot of people get confused by all the different like variations of it. There's faster EFT. There's people who skip different points. None of that matters, right? It doesn't matter which variation you use. What matters is being able to discover the true source of that feeling, right? So when people say tapping didn't work for me, it's always 100% of the time because they couldn't figure out what the belief was about, right? But yeah, you do a pre-check. So when I did that, it was a 10. And then you do 2 rounds of tapping on different points of your face while you repeat, while you kind of tune into the problem. So they'll hate me and I'll let them down. They'll be really disappointed. And then you check back in when you're done with your number. And for me, it went down probably to a 6 or a 7. I don't remember exactly, but to a 6 or a 7. And then you just keep doing it until the feeling's gone. And literally it only takes about 10 minutes to. That's why we say you can delete any limiting belief in 10 minutes or less, because it really isn't a long process, as long as you're tapping on the right thing, right?
Right. Well, that's the thing. I think I would love to do a show where we do some tapping at some point, because I feel like people are fascinated by that. I've experienced, and I don't know how to do it myself. Like, I don't know the science behind it or the art behind it, but I have done it. I've had other people show me how, and I can tell that if you accept it, you feel it. You feel that number decreasing. I don't remember the number either, but I just remember that was something that I hesitated because I thought, well, this is dumb.
It looks dumb.
It looks like you've lost your mind. Well, no, what you're trying to do is find your mind. Yes. And we're trying to find what it is that is stopping you from getting to whatever that next level is that you need to overcome.
Yeah. And for people who think it's super weird, I would add that we are very research-based in everything that we do. And there are a ton of studies. We counted over 141 different studies done on EFT on issues as serious as PTSD, people who used it for around 8 sessions and no longer met the clinical standards for PTSD. Their PTSD decreased so significantly that they were no longer diagnosed with it. And in some cases completely went away, many cases. So there's not a lot of crystal clarity about what they call the neural mechanism behind why it works. But there's a lot of research that suggests that it does work and it's very effective for all sorts of things. So,
why do you think we have such a hard time? I'm always curious about this. Like, I know I have the same thing. We've all experienced limiting beliefs. We've all stopped doing something, stopped us from doing it, and we know we should just take the leap, but something's holding us back. Why are we so caught up in that from your experience? Why is it so hard to sit down and go, one of the sentence completion things that you said, for me to say, I can't sleep because, or I can't do this because, I mean, for me, I don't want to dive that deep. Let's use that for an example. And so it's hard. It can be painful. Is that primarily the pushback that you get when you're working with your clients?
Yes. I mean, so the thing that the number one thing to understand about the mind is its number one job is to keep you safe and to keep you away from pain and painful subjects. Right. So that inherently is a problem when you're trying to delve deep, right? We always caution people that not to tackle things as big as PTSD and trauma on your own using this. I have done it. I have a history of PTSD. I've used it on myself, but I always work with a licensed professional in that. Those are the cases where we do not work with people one-on-one, is when, for those specific issues. So yeah, the mind doesn't want to feel pain. And so when you're trying to discover the root of it, it can be a little bit of a problem. And that's why you need to use techniques that kind of get around that, or hypnosis is a great example. There is a modality called RTT, rapid transformation therapy, that uses aspects of hypnosis to first calm you down and to get your mind into a relaxed, what they call a theta state, which is just kind of that, like right before you fall asleep, you're just relaxed. And then you can bring up the subject matter or the feelings and the stories and from that relaxed place to identify it, right? So there's different tools and techniques that can get around that. But yeah, that most people, they don't push back on that they're necessarily afraid of the pain. They just don't know how to figure it out. They don't know what's going on. That's the number one challenge that they're having. I'm not really sure why. I just feel afraid to do it. I just avoid it. And the other thing is that limiting beliefs they're not like this head thing. Every time you stumble upon a limiting belief, it activates the threat response in your body and your brain too. So that's why physically it's painful to take those actions or to move forward, because it's not like you're just in your head worried about something. Literally your body's reacting from that fear, flight, or fight response. So that's another thing that's kind of important to understand.
And that's what you kind of experienced when you were having such a hard time writing essays, right?
Correct.
And I think it can be it's anywhere, guys. If you are, guys and gals, you're feeling that, you know exactly what Josh is talking about. There's something that just brings up this dread in you, something that is stopping you, and all you can usually ever say, because you don't take that deep dive, is, well, that's just the way I've always been, or that's how I was raised, or you come up with something that you've either had to tell yourself or been told your whole life. And all that is the surface stuff that Josh is talking about. You're not really getting to the nitty gritty of the why. And that's where you make, in my opinion, the true progress. When you really hit that, even if it's a nerve and it hurts, when you really hit that, that's when you can take that real first step and that real overcoming step for things. So tell me about Learn Your Brain. How do people reach out to you? People want you to coach them. They want to learn more about EFT. They want to learn more about the tapping side. They want to learn all about this, because I guarantee you people are going to want to know how to address those limiting beliefs, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've created a lot of free training. I've got a Facebook group called Growth Mastery. People can join. But the easiest way that people can get in touch with me is just through, sorry about that background noise, is just through our website, learnyourbrain.com, all spelled out. Or, if you want to send me a direct email, it's easy, josh@learnyourbrain.com. That's the easiest way to do it. Just send us a message through our site. We actually have some free training that you can watch on mindset related stuff that we talk about here. So yeah, that's probably the best thing to do.
All right. So Josh Matthews Morgan, learnyourbrain.com. It's scrolling across the bottom. You all know that 2020 has been your time, and you certainly are looking for ways to expand and get outside that mindset that's limiting you right now. So I just want to encourage you to reach out to Josh. Learnyourbrain.com. Thanks so much for being on the show. It was so good. I definitely would love to have you come back.
I would love that. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for being such a great host, Ted. I appreciate it.
Great questions. Thank you. Your topic's amazing. It's so timely and people are hungry for it, which we talked about before we went live. All right. Josh Matthews Morgan, learnyourbrain.com. Have a great weekend, everybody. We love you. Be safe.
All right.
See you back Monday. Bye, everybody.